Welcome to the Behavioral View.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Behavioral View, where we are doing hot topics today, just 30 quick moments on one or two different things. And today I am accompanied by Nissa Van Etten, as per usual, from our assessment team. Carrie Millico could not be here, but Tim Fuller has agreed to step into her shoes from the clinical programming team. And I am here from the Institute. And we're just going to kind of talk about different applications of ABA in different types of settings. Guys, CentralReach has recently kind of started to incorporate beyond autism services. So looking at autism and intellectual disability services, we're including some educational services, different markets, and this feels like something that we should talk about is how is ABA actually being used in those different places. And I know both of you have some experience in that, so I think it's logical for you to chime in.
Well, where to begin? Where to begin, Shannon? I appreciate the informal sort of atmosphere that this has, because not to diminish the value or the significance of the topics, as people are doing very significant and valuable work in a variety of areas outside of what would be considered perhaps the dominant application of our science. So I look forward to seeing where the conversation goes.
Yeah. When I think about applications beyond autism specifically and think about individuals with intellectual disabilities, I think a lot about my work in the education space. Working in the school settings, working with teachers in terms of training and support with IEP, objective development, consultating way back early in my career in the schools as well. So I think that's kind of, as we move into other markets and we work from CentralReach's perspective with the education space, we're having a lot more conversations with teachers about how applied behavior analysis can and is beneficial to their classroom setting.
Yeah. My original background was working in ID services through regional centers, where the application was a little different in that we're working through other people, much like you do in the schools oftentimes. So all of these different models for what is a behavior analyst doing, how are we disseminating behavior analysis to other professionals, what remains in our scope, what do we train others to do? All of these kinds of questions were always being intermingled and constantly looked at, which people who may be making a shift from clinic-based or home-based services into school or even ID services, regional center type things, may have a lot of questions about as well, both in terms of the ethics and the specific procedures and methods that get used.
I think that, one thing that comes to mind a little bit, sorry, did I?
No, go ahead.
I wonder sometimes for behavior analysts if it can be, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but if it resonates with either one of you or perhaps audience members down the road. One of the things I think difficult inside of our discipline is that historically the application of our science was varied and was a real expression of how how our basic science could be applied and effective in a variety of different settings. And then as our application became much more professionalized, it has found itself narrowed in scope in terms of population. And obviously, I'm not saying anything new here to either one of you or perhaps to anyone in the audience listening. But I do think that does pose some interesting struggles that behavior analysts often find, given one, our subject matter of human behavior and its relationship to the environing circumstances, positions us to having a very strong opinion often to almost all disciplines.
Mm.
And I don't know about you guys, but I'm curious in what your reactions would be to this, is the degree to which our discipline has collectively been humbled. And I don't know how collectively our discipline has reckoned with that feature. I'm skirting around the point so that I don't say it clearly, which is behavior analysts have strong opinions, feel like they can fix everything. And we have a tradition in our discipline, certainly with certain very strong voices in our discipline's history of looking toward those ends, changing the world. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly had illusions of grandeur in terms of the impact that I would perhaps participate in. And I don't know, a little humility goes a long way as we've become more professionalized, as we look to having more opportunities. Take the education space, not an easy space to just walk into and say, everyone, hey, someone effective is here now. Relax. I'm being flippant.
I think there's a way to tactfully approach these scenarios, right? As behavior analysts, to come in and I think what we're learning is that, and we've learned from our past, that we did not collaborate well, for lack of a better way of saying it, and that there are a lot of literature out currently on, improving collaboration, really making sure that we respect other professionals and their scope, especially when you're working in multidisciplinary teams, like you will in most school settings, in regional center type settings. You're bringing in the entire team that's working with that client, and you've got to listen to their perspective and their expertise and respect it in the best interest of that client. But I'm in agreement, Tim. I think that, and every one of us on the call listening in, we've been humbled in some capacity, in some interaction with a parent or another professional, or even just in that elevator speech when someone says, what is ABA or what is behavior analysis? People are going to question that. And I think having that humble answer that brings it back to the foundation of the science will really help us in the long run.
Well said. Much better said than I did. Thank you.
No.
Well, do you guys have tips for that? I mean, since we have all been through it, do you have a good story? Can you be helpful to people who might be struggling in that area?
I've got great stories. Those are better shared under different circumstances, I think, sometimes. One thing that I try and remind myself of is sort of a founding opportunity that our science is perhaps better positioned than some other orientations to psychological events, and that is we're really good observers. And I should say that we have the opportunity to be really good observers and to attend to features of the environment that are often overlooked or not made as clear or pronounced as a really important factor in the environment that is contributing to behavior that we want more of or less of or whatever. And I wonder, for myself, often I've found that I've been able to participate better with other professionals when I really stand from a place of observing, learning as much as I can about the contribution that I can make, instead of coming in with the idea that I know that I can make a contribution. Behavior analysis works, and it works under really incredible circumstances. And that is a place of pride that I think that practicing behavior analysts can stand from. But I think that, being a good, behavior analyst from a scientific perspective, I think positions us well to be good observers. And that's always helped me not come in really strong. Not to suggest that coming in strong is always a bad thing. That has a lot more to do with your interpersonal skills than it does your professional skills sometimes.
And the situation and what is called for. I mean, I've been in places or teams or dealing with specific issues where maybe they've been struggling for a really long time, and they're calling in someone for consultation, and then they want you to come in hot. They want you to come in and say, here's what we can do. Let me blaze this trail for you. But there are other times where you are just there as part of the team. You're an equal player. You're not there to save anything. And, then at that point in time, I kind of try to kick into listening to what the goals of the rest of the team are, how everybody else is going to kick in, and how can ABA wrap around that? Because that's the key to me for some of the working relationships that I've built with people, other professionals over the years, is when they have been struggling to get their own piece of the paper accomplished, then sometimes we can incorporate some behavior analysis around what that goal is and look at why it's not moving and data collection techniques and things like that. And by helping them, sometimes that's made them more receptive to future work where maybe I feel like I need to be a little bit more in the front.
I love that. I think about, different experiences in other settings where we brought in behavioral techniques such as schedule or a different system that would support an individual in following through and completing a task, whether that be with an IEP team or, just a parent who needed support. I also think to a couple pieces of literature that I love to reflect on. One is, I don't want to butcher the name, but it's Joe Sheehan and colleagues from UNT. They talked about not using so much behavior analytic vernacular in talking with, other professionals and parents. But within that article, they talk about taking some of our language and providing different terms in ways that we can make it, understandable to teachers and parents and other service providers. And that is something I've done in supervision, where we made it an activity where we would role play using, a manned and attacked and changing that language, being the parent or the SLP and saying, okay, we're going to work together and I need you to explain what a manned is in a way that I want to actually go in there and start collecting data onto that behavior.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, that translational work has always been, I shouldn't say always, but in the last several decades, there's always been that echoing of, all right, no one cares, just said simply, and if that's the only way for us to communicate it, well, then we've severely misunderstood our opportunity in making a contribution. So I couldn't agree more. I also think too, that there is something there's an important line there. That doesn't mean that we soften our approach. that's just a communicative technique, but we don't want to amputate certain really important features of our science too. I think that the application of that science, we don't want to just give everything away. We also want to look for opportunities to highlight where we can be of particular service to others. And I remember, thinking really strategically about what it means to be in an interdisciplinary team, which is a really cool phrase, but often is misunderstood in that it doesn't just mean working together. It literally means coming together from your individual professional positions to coming up with something really new. In that everyone there really needs to be at the top of their game to then achieve what is being asked of them. And I think that that's really apparent in the efforts made in sort of elder care or inside of the hospital setting and things like that, where they have long since had interdisciplinary teams, and behavior analysts are, making some inroads in those settings.
And Tim, I know that you're a word guy, and I am too. Your vocabulary is more advanced than mine, but we both love words. And one of the things in my years of working in that system, it started out being interdisciplinary. It went to multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
And it goes back and forth. And I'm reading multidisciplinary now a lot more. And that is a subtle shift, but it is such a big shift because it's the difference between all of us combining our resources to do what you just said, create something totally new, versus all of us trying to chop the person into many pieces and just take away our bit. And we do our bit and then put it all together. It's a real difference, and it's so much harder to be interdisciplinary than it is to be multidisciplinary.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I think that's a really great talk about a good wordsmithing, good marketing there. And, I don't think that there's anything to do about that. There's nothing, it's not right or wrong. It's just a situation that you're in. I think those that are sort of in research settings are probably better positioned to find themselves in more interdisciplinary aspects, especially if they're working inside of grant funding or things like that. And we can probably learn a lot from features of that way of working with other professionals. But you're right. In a multidisciplinary thing, I think that's where the humility becomes an opportunity of no one called us up and said, please change the world. I think that there are many efforts and many really laudable efforts to make important and significant change at a large scale. I don't think anyone needs to turn further than the efforts of people like Tony Bigland, and he's a shining star in our discipline of what can be done with really diligent, really methodical research, application, and a stellar career of doing that. But no one's going to pick up the phone and say, behavior analyst, please come save me. That's not, if it was going to happen, I think it probably would have happened by now. So I think finding opportunities, as Nissa had mentioned, where can we put a toe that could make a difference, both for those that we're working alongside, but ultimately what really matters is, those that we're trying to serve. And then little baby steps takes a lot of work. I really applaud those professionals that see the opportunity to apply our science in places like sports and inside medical fields and different populations, especially those that have for a long time worked with the aging population, which feels like such an opportunity to continue to support high qualities of life for those that are perhaps a little more seasoned in their years. And so, so I really applaud all of those efforts. Who wouldn't? Those are great things to applaud. But I think that there are things, Shannon, that behavior analysts have a real it's just right in front of us, and they're doing it. And I think that it's only going to continue to grow. We bring up education. Education is certainly there. But when we look at where people are actively looking for behavior change, where they're sort of I think about health and wellness and all of the contributions that behavior analysts can and should make. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's like a new health and wellness app that you can download on your phone. And when we look at those areas where individuals are actually taking on the response effort to essentially make clear, I want to change something about my behavior. Mm-hmm. I want to lose weight. I want to be better at, this sport or whatever. Those are really cool opportunities for behavior analysts to look in, because that motivational variable has already been necessarily observed from the person itself. They're assenting, like, I'm going to download this because I want to make a change. And I do think that does pose challenges for behavior analysts as well, because it also puts us in contact with people that are clearly very, very, very good at collecting data, giving you very sophisticated metrics for analytics, and suggesting in ways that don't feel confronting and that feel really like I have autonomy over it. I think there's some really cool opportunities there. I don't know how many behavior analysts are always on the ground inside of that, but certainly an opportunity.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you're talking, there is this little worry always when technology comes in. Are we going to be replaced by technology? Do we need a behavior analyst? Do we have an app? I don't think so, honestly. But, you think about things like Avail, right? So it's wonderful technology that is supporting people's ability to change their own behavior and to teach themselves. But you still need the behavior analyst behind it for, breaking those skills down and individualizing and tailoring and helping the person to identify where it is that you want to go. What are the skills that are missing? Someone's got to program. the content of the app. I know we can't do the other side of it, but we can at least be involved in the content, right?
Absolutely. No, that's a very good point. And I couldn't agree more with you, Shannon. We're not, I think when the topic is human behavior and the environment that it occurs in, you can't build an app for that. You can't capture all of that, and you can't take the human outside of or take the human away from that change. But so I'm not worried. I'm not worried. There are worries, though. I do worry a little bit about the well, they're threats, I should say. I should say they're worries, but we don't want to lose our science side of things just so that we get to play in a sandbox kind of thing. We want to make sure that we're doing good work wherever we do it. And I think that those people that are out there in those areas some of them are doing just fabulous work for sure.
I do too. And I'll go back to your original statement, your opening statement, Tim, that we started out with broad applications. We were never really meant to, originally, I don't think there was some thought, well, let's find a diagnostic category and stick our science all in that. I think actually the opposite would have been true. So, because we've narrowed our focus in large part does not mean that there aren't still and haven't always been people working in these other areas and have really done a lot of good work that is just not as disseminated as much as the autism work has been.
Oh yeah. The one thing I would say about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just to add on. Yeah, I don't. Certainly in this group, I don't think that this is happening. But I also don't want to dissuade or diminish what contributions have been made to autistics. Right? The application of behavior analysis to a population-specific is a. I think that is a. I think I don't know enough words of praise that can be given to the efforts made toward those efforts. I just think that oftentimes it can come across as, why aren't we doing more? Why isn't this being adopted here? We can make a contribution over there. And I have criticism for that approach to communicating what our opportunities are, because the last thing I would want to be communicated is that the efforts that applied behavior analysts are making towards population-specific matters of concern are no less valuable. I think that if that's all we did, we could hang our hats up high, feeling good about making a contribution, and all the other stuff. So I know that we're not saying that, but I want to make clear, because sometimes I hear that and have heard it historically, and it comes across as almost sort of diminishing our opportunity, and I don't come from that place.
I don't know. I don't think of it as diminishing our opportunity. I think of it as, sometimes I think of it as out of alignment with behaviorism in general, when we think of ourselves as treating a DSM disorder. Okay. That's where I live with it. And then the other side that bothers me is places where we're limited in scope to autism. So my advocacy for it kind of comes from that point. I think definitely we've done a lot of good, and we have a lot more to offer others as well. And we don't want to be just roped in because that's where the money is right now.
It's a very good point.
And I think this, jumping in here a little bit, goes to some conversations we've had in the past, Shannon, where you've, discussed it as a worldview.
Yeah.
That the science and our application and us as behavioral scientists, that's how we perceive the world, and that's how we interact with the world, which is so exciting when we take it beyond, if we've worked in autism and we're able to apply it and find careers in other scopes and other places and begin to really make an impact, like in the education space or in health and fitness. And, I know for myself, I love health and fitness. It is a part of my daily life, and I get to coach CrossFit, and I can bring in the application in how I coach and provide feedback. And when I give pointers to some of those athletes most of our athletes are just, middle-aged adults coming in after a day of work. And when I give that feedback, it's a lot more of, oh, I didn't know I was doing it this way. This is a great, I know exactly what I'm doing when you tell me in that moment and you pinpoint that behavior.
Yeah.
But I'm not telling telling them that I'm using behavior analysis. It's just embedded within my worldview.
Right.
And I can bring it into my practice there.
Yeah.
Such a good point.
Well, I guess this is a brief, and we're running into the last 4 minutes here. So do you guys have one word of advice for people who are heading into ID services or educational services in particular? I'll go first, and since I knew I was going to ask the question, you didn't. Mine would be, if you're going into ID services, learn about person-centered planning and learn it the way it's intended to be implemented, not as that interdisciplinary, not multidisciplinary, because it's really, that is the way people are shaping their lives, especially in adult ID services.
That's great.
My advice is to go in with that same thread of humbleism, making sure that you are listening to all members in the team, at the table, and that student, if you're working in the education space, in front of you, in the best interest of supporting the team and optimal outcomes for that student.
That's always good. Yeah.
I don't have much more to add other than those good points, other than to, whether it's education where I'd have a bit more experience, or in foster care or in elder care or something like that, is I would be a very astute student of the system you're trying to go into.
It's really good.
And do what you can to not only understand the systemic configuration of whatever school or school district you're going, but try to understand it at its various levels, so that you can your trajectory of learning to making the kind of contribution you want to make is, I think, accelerated when you understand where you are in the system, where the system is amenable to change, where perhaps it's not amenable for change, so that you can kind of put that on the side and maybe affect change down the road when you've had a bit more time in that system. But good system.
That is so good, Tim. I mean, hats off. Really good point. I think not only for doing good work, but avoiding burnout, because you can really stress yourself out trying to change things in places where it's just not going to.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Yep.
Very good. Thank you guys for joining. Tim, thank you for stepping into Carrie's shoes today. It's always delightful having you.
It's very lovely to spend some time with both of you. Thank you guys.
Great conversation.
Yeah, so you guys be sure and tune in for our next episode. But for now, we're going to be signing off. See you next time.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Behavioral View.